And now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Elizabeth Vieira Talbot, PhD, speaker, director for Jesus 101 Biblical Institute. Elizabeth now leads the Jesus 101 Media Ministry of the North American Division of SDA, designed to offer in-depth, Christ-centered biblical studies resources. She is regularly featured in Hope Channel and Esperanza TV, 3ABN, Latino, LLBN, ROKU, Jesus 101 channel, and in several international TV channels and other social media venues, as well as radio stations throughout the U.S. and Canada. Elizabeth Vieira Talbot was born in Argentina to the home of Adventist missionaries. Since her early childhood, her parents instilled in her the love of Jesus, and she always envisioned preaching and teaching as she gathered her dolls as an audience. She was invited by the Seventh-day Adventist Church to become a full-time pastor, which she gladly accepted as a call from God. She became a young adult / young families pastor and evangelist while earning her master's degree in biblical studies and subsequent PhD. She has enjoyed evangelism in many forms. Eventually, she became a senior pastor for several years and an adjunct biblical studies professor. Elizabeth's main identity is her passion about the good news of Jesus Christ. It's like fire in my bones, she says, and she means it. So I would like to call Pastor Lafitte up to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Perla. Applause for Perla, your women's ministry coordinator. Great job this week. I'm going to invite Dr. Talbot. Welcome to Miami. Everyone received some Jesus 101 book. What is this? What is it?
Sure, my mic is on because it's not coming up. So is my mic on? Hello, it's on. They just need to bring me up over there. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. All right. You were asking?
These bookmarks.
Everybody has the bookmarks. Can I see them? Can you raise them? So, okay, good. Because we have a gift for you. So the first thing we're going to do, this ministry is a media ministry of the NAD, the North American Division. So we do, TV and radio and all of that. But we also want to be with you every day. So I need you to download the Jesus 101 app right now because we have a gift for you. And the first person that downloads it, I'm going to give you the gift in your hand. Everybody else is going to order it through the app. So the Jesus 101 app, when you download, it should look something like this. It's going to have a bunch of icons and Jesus 101 and a cross behind it. You will have listen resources, which means that we have daily devotionals, 1 minute, plug into life, 15 minutes for those who want to do longer. All of our television series are on the watch icon, and all of our 1 minute videos are on the watch icon. You have audiobooks for the car. Everything is free. So I'm hoping that you will use it every day. Now at the bottom, there's something that says book offer. And we have a special code just for today. It will expire tomorrow for you to be able to download our latest book called Radical Discipleship. So in the book offer, if you put the code Miami Temple, everybody will remember the code because that's where we are, right? That's what your church is called, right? So that's the code we put in. Miami Temple. All of you will receive this book for free this week. So don't forget, I know you're studying women right now, and I'm hoping you will watch the whole TV series called Chosen. It's all women of the Bible, and it's in your app. But I want to give you a book on the 12 disciples that were also chosen. So this is the book. Now, if anybody has the app right now that you can show it to me, the first person that makes it up here, you will get the book. So, all right, very good.
All right.
And this is my book, so it has a few notes in it, and I signed it for you so that you have a book signed by the author. So everybody else, please order it right now, and you will receive it this week. And I hope you use all the other resources on the app. They're free.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Bible is not a series of disconnected stories. It is a single narrative in which every story, every character points beyond itself to one who is greater. The story of Adam and Eve is not just about the first man and woman. There is a true and better Adam who passed the test in the garden and whose obedience is ascribed to us. There is a true and better Abel who, though innocently slain, has blood that cries out not for our condemnation, but for our acquittal. There is a true and better Abraham who answered the call of God to leave all the comfortable and familiar and go out into the void to create a new people of God. There is a true and better Isaac, the son of laughter, of grace, who was not just offered up by his father on the mount, but was truly sacrificed for us all. There is a true and better Jacob, who wrestled and took the blow of justice we deserve, so we, like Jacob, only receive the wounds of grace that wake us up and discipline us. There is a true and better Joseph, who at the right hand of the king forgives those who betrayed and sold him and uses his new power to save them. There is a true and better Moses who stands in the gap between the people and the Lord and who mediates a new covenant. There is a true and better rock of Moses who, struck with the rod of God's justice, now gives us water in the desert. There is a true and better Job, the truly innocent sufferer, who then intercedes for and saves his foolish friends. There is a true and better David, whose victory becomes his people's victory, though they never lifted a stone to accomplish it themselves. There is a true and better Esther, who didn't just risk losing an earthly palace, but lost the ultimate heavenly one, who didn't just risk his life, but gave his life to save his people. There is a true and better Jonah, who was cast out into the storm so that we could be brought in. There is a true and better Passover lamb, innocent, perfect, helpless, slain so the angel of death will pass over us. He's the true temple, the true prophet, the true priest, the true king, the true sacrifice, the true lamb, the true light, and the true bread. The Bible is not a series of disconnected stories. It is a single narrative that points to one person, Jesus.
The whole Bible may be summarized in 2 words, just 2 words. Jesus wins. We need to know how the story ends, because you will have a hard day, many hard days, and you'll get bad results from the lab, and you're going to lose a parent, and you need to know how the story ends, and we know how the story ends, and Jesus wins. So we're going to say that together, those 2 words. If you don't remember anything else about the whole talk today, remember those 2 words. Let's say them together. 1, 2, 3. Jesus wins. One more time. Jesus wins. If somebody says, summarize the Bible in 3 words, you're going to say, ta-da, Jesus wins. Because you can't add anything to this complete message from Genesis to Revelation. Jesus wins. You know, I'm sure you heard this story of the fork, but the fork story became painfully personal. So I'm going to start today's talk with this fork. The story goes that a pastor was called into the home of someone who was very sick, and they knew they were going to pass away probably 2 or 3 weeks. And sometimes as pastors, I've been a pastor for over 15 years, and we get this holy moments in which a person that is about to die calls us to prepare their own memorial service with us. And by the way, when you face death, there's only 2 options. You either have assurance or you're fearful. There's no other option in the middle. And this woman called her pastor, and the pastor said, okay, let's put this together if you're ready. And she said, yes, my sister's going to do my bio. My son is going to sing this and that. And then she had the weirdest request. She said, I want an open casket ceremony, so I'm going to be there. And I want you to put a fork in my hand. The pastor said, excuse me, I don't think I heard you right. What did you say? She says, I want a fork in my hand. And she said, he said, why would you want a fork in your hand? And she said, because that's going to be my last testimony. Everybody's going to ask you why I have a fork in my hand. And this is what you're going to tell them. Because I'm already older, the youth of the church help me during potlucks and during lunches. They bring me my food. And then when they come and pick up the empty plate, if they tell me, keep your fork, she says, I know a good dessert is coming and the best is yet to come. So she says, I'm dying with a fork in my hand, absolutely sure that the best is yet to come. I mean, what a wonderful way of living or dying with a fork in your hand, knowing that the best, by the way, Pastor, a whole church decided to make pins with forks so that when people ask them why you're wearing a fork, they were telling them the best is yet to come. Yeah, it's a great conversation item. But it became painfully private and personal because some time ago, my mother, I was speaking in a camp meeting. She was on her way to the hospital after several years of cancer. And they called me and they said, your mom is on the hospital. So I called her and we talked. And she said, I think this is it. She says, but don't worry. I'm holding a fork in my hand. She had heard me tell this story before. And I lost my mom, and a few months ago I lost my dad. And watching people go through the moments of life in which the rubber meets the road, where there's no room for anything else. Everything becomes a black hole, and all of a sudden you have one thing left. It's either all true or it's all not true. You don't have a lot of room for a lot of other things. I either will see my parents again or I won't. And you don't need to be losing somebody to be in this situation because there's all kinds of tomb-like situations in our lives. Sometimes our marriage is dying. Sometimes our job is dying. Sometimes our kids are not turning out the way we thought. And we find ourselves in tomb-like situations wondering if there's anything else. By the way, many of us lose dreams, and dreams die very slowly. And we mourn our dream that didn't come true. So today we're going to go deep into the Gospel of John to see what is it that keeps us going in moments where we seem to lose everything. How can you live or die, for that matter, with a fork in your hand? What is it about this Jesus from Genesis to Revelation that seems to give us a reason for life and even for joy in the middle of the trials? Because, by the way, joy is not the absence of trouble, it's the presence of Christ. You can be in the middle of the greatest trouble and have deep joy and peace, because joy is not the absence of trouble, it's the presence of Christ. So I'm going to ask you to open your Bibles in John chapter 11. This story is only recorded in this Gospel of John, and today I'm going to use the grapefruit so that you don't forget the topic. It's the resurrection of Lazarus, and we're doing Transform Women this whole month in this church. And this is a woman that we're going to study today, Lazarus' sister, who actually transformed my life. And she was transformed in the process of learning who Jesus was. And so we're going to go to John chapter 11. And John chapter 11 starts with a problem. And let me tell you, if you have come with a problem today, you're blessed. Because every miracle in the Bible started with a problem. So if you came with a problem, you're a candidate for a miracle. And I can't imagine somebody coming in without a problem. And if you don't have any problem in your life, all I have is one word: wait. Because it's coming. You know, Jesus said, in this world you'll have trouble. But be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. So we live with a woohoo in our hearts and a fork in our hands. Not because there's no trouble, but because we know how the story ends. How does it end? Jesus wins. So we know the end of the story. Let's go to John chapter 11 that starts with a problem. I'm going to give you some fun facts as we go through the narrative. And then we're going to use our grapefruit here. So chapter 11 of John, verse 1. A certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And you know what is interesting? Lazarus comes from the name Eleazar, which means God is my help. So even the name is already a request for help, and we haven't even started the story. So Lazarus comes from Eleazar, God is my help. Verse 3, the sisters sent word to him, to Jesus, saying, Lord, behold, the one whom you love is sick. Now this is a very interesting thing. Because if somebody says, the one whom you love is sick, they better show up there in the next 4 hours. You're not going to delay if you love somebody. But we have one of the strangest juxtapositions in all of the New Testament on verse 5 and 6. Chapter 11 of John, verses 5 and 6. If you're struggling with God's timing, these two verses are for you. Verse 5, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 days longer. What's up with that? If you love somebody, if God forbid I get sick tonight, and you call my husband and you say, the one you love is sick, he better be here tomorrow morning. Because if I get better and he's not here, we're going to have a little talk. Because you expect that the one who loves you will show up immediately. And here it says in verse 5 that Jesus loved them. And when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he delayed 2 more days. Well, let me tell you something that is very interesting when we study the first century culture. At that time, there was a belief, it's not what the Bible teaches, but they believed in the culture, that the soul of a person who died stayed around the tomb 3 days. And only on the 4th day, it left for good. And the person was really, really dead. So Jesus delays 2 more days so that he can get there on the 4th day. So that people know that he's really, really dead. Because he's about to do something amazing, and nobody would have taken this as a resurrection 2 days before. So I have made a little statement for myself that I have it written everywhere, and it says this: the apparent delays of God are designed to show the magnitude of the miracle. The apparent delays of God. Because they are apparent, they look like delays to us, but God is never late. The apparent delays of God are designed to show the magnitude of the miracle. And so many times in the narrative you will hear, it was the 4th day, it was the 4th day, it was the 4th day, which means really, really dead. Because Jesus is about to do an incredible miracle of resurrection. But of course, they didn't know that. And when you are in the middle of a trial, we don't know God's plans. And when you can't see God's hand, trust his heart. Because often we can't see his plan. But we have seen his heart at the cross, and sometimes that's all we have. And so we start a dialogue with a woman, Lazarus' sister. And this particular dialogue has challenged me and has taught me what we are all here for. And this is the dialogue. It starts on verse 17. Jesus eventually makes it to where Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And Martha, who is a very knowledgeable person, in John something funny happens in the Gospel of John. Everybody knows a lot of things. They have this conscious, intellectual knowledge of God, but nobody's believing. And so the whole narrative, always people say, okay, Nicodemus says, we know you came from God. And Jesus says, but do you believe? Well, Martha will say, I know he will resurrect. Jesus says, but do you believe? The longest 13 inches a person will ever journey in their lives is from their head to their heart. It's the longest. Some of us will take 60, 80 years to do this journey. Some through pain will do it early in their lives. The journey between your head and your heart is the longest journey, and it usually happens through pain. When you come to believe, this is your assurance, not just that you can quote a doctrine, is that you know the person of Jesus and you have come to believe in him. So here, poor Martha, she's struggling with Jesus' timing. Of course, we would too. And so she says to him, let's start on verse 17 of chapter 11 of John. This is a dialogue that will show the many different levels of faith. And I'm going to use this grapefruit as an example. So help me with your imagination. This is a whole edible fruit, and we're going to call it the fruit of faith, with all its different parts. And so we're going to go with this. Verse 17. When Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb. How many days? Which means what? Really, really dead. Very good. Really, really dead. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. And Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Here we go, verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And more than a reproach, this is a statement of faith. I know who you are. You healed everybody and their mother. Why couldn't you show up on time for my brother? But even now, she says, I know, because Martha knows a lot of things. I know, and in the Greek, it's very important that you know that it says, whatever things is a plural. She's not talking about the resurrection of Lazarus. She's saying, whatever things you still ask of God, he will still hear you. Meaning, you missed it this time, but God will still hear your prayers. Okay? You didn't make it on time for my family, but God still hears your prayer. Whatever things you keep asking God, he will still hear you. I know that. Now we're going to call this the how of Christianity. How does a Christian live? So Martha says, I believe in prayer. Do you believe in prayer? Yes, I believe in prayer too. We do other things. We pray, we sing, we worship, we study the Bible. Those are the how of the Christian. How does a Christian live? So she says, I know, Jesus, that prayer works and God will still hear you. So this is a wonderful level of faith. It's the behavioral part of faith, how we live. How? But Jesus says to Martha, there's more than the how. And so Jesus answered to her, let's read it again, verse 22. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus said, your brother will rise again. And Martha says, I know, because Martha knows a lot of things. So Martha responds now to with what we call the what of Christianity, the doctrines we believe in. And she quotes the state of the dead from our Adventist manual, word by word. She says here, I'm not kidding, go look it up. Verse 24, Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. I got this whole figured out. I know it. I know. Okay, so this white stuff that I don't know what is scientifically called, we're going to call it the what of Christianity. The doctrines, the things we believe in, the whats. Adventists happen to have 28 doctrines. Other denominations have another amount of doctrines. And we have doctrines. The what do we believe? What do we believe? We believe in the Sabbath. We believe in the state of the dead. We believe in whatever. The problem is that Jesus said, yeah, but this and this by itself don't have any value. The how and the whats only are designed to know the who. The how and the what don't exist for us to go around preaching like this. Because the how and the what are designed to access the who. So, Jesus says to her, but there's more. See, Martha knows a lot of things. She knows about prayer. Pastor Lafitte, why don't you come up here? So, let's say we're evangelizing, right? So I'm going to say, you got to pray. Eat. Go ahead. Yes. It's edible, right? Yeah. So make sure you pray 2 hours a day until your knees are black and blue, okay? Keep eating. Now, let me tell you this. I know a lot of people that spend 30 years just doing this, saying, okay, I read the Bible. Is it good? It's really, really good. Okay, so how about this? Keep the Sabbath. This is doctrine now by itself. Well, make sure you eat this from sunset to sunset, okay? Oh, we're not going to go on until you eat it. Now, how is this Christian life going? You have all the house and you have all the whats, so you can eat it. I mean, I don't know how many years you go through it, 10, 15, 20, 30, 35? Let's give Pastor Lafitte a big hand. So if you evangelize like this, I can guarantee you it will become bitter and you will run out of something because this wasn't meant for you to do this. So Jesus says to Martha, I'm glad you got the house figured out. I'm glad you have the whats figured out, but you're missing one little thing here. And so Jesus said to her, verse 24 and 25. He's still chewing. Okay, verse 24 and 25. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said to her, but I am the resurrection and the life. Verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? You know so many things. Do you believe in me? And she kind of like an afterthought says, oh yeah, I know who you are. You are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who was going to come into the world. Okay, says Jesus, why don't you start there? Let's go to the tomb. Now, let me tell you, it's very different if you evangelize like this. See, I'm a pastor of the Adventist church, and I believe in the Sabbath and all our doctrines, except that I don't believe in them on their own without the who. So the what and the how were designed for me to explain to you. No, wait. Well, see, this is what happens. This is what happens. Now, we didn't plan this, but truly, okay, fine, I feel bad for you now. Now, let me tell you, if somebody wants to know the doctrines, I want to tell them, you know why I know I'm going to see my parents again? I know I'm going to see my parents again, not because I can recite the doctrine word by word, but because I know the person who said, I am the resurrection and the life. You know why I keep the Sabbath? Because that's the day I rest to be reminded that my Creator has also redeemed me and I can rest from my works in Christ. Now, everybody, like you guys, is going, and the whole neighborhood now wants to know what. It reminds me of Saturday Night Live. You like it, the Jews? Remember that? Well, see, everybody wants this. Why do they want this? Because this is the real thing. All your house and all your whats are accessing the who. When you access the who, you found the core. And the doctrines are only straws through which you're going to drink the living water. They're not the juice. Jesus is the juice. Okay, so now we got that part. I love how everybody's like, because it's the perfect example of evangelism. You can go blue in the face evangelizing like this. 28 nights. Oh. No, 28 nights of Jesus. He said, if you lift me up, I'm going to draw all people to myself. Now, all of us are just learning how to explain the doctrines in the gospel perspective. For many years, we didn't even know. So here we have, in our church, we don't have 28 pearls of great price. We have one pearl of great price that we look at from 28 different angles, but it's the same pearl. Jesus Christ and Him crucified. So, I'm going to tell you why Jesus kept pointing to Himself as the answer and the reason why we're going to live with a fork in our hands. And this is the reason. So I'm going to explain to you a Hebrew word that changed my life and changed my ministry. This is a word, goel. It's like Noel for Christmas, but with a G. So let's say it together and I'll tell you what that means. Goel. One more time. Goel. Goel in Hebrew is kinsman redeemer, the closest of kin in the Bible. So every time that somebody was in trouble, only the closest of kin, the goel, could do something that nobody else could do. Check this out. I'm going to tell you real quick, just in case you're taking notes. 5 roles that only the goel could do for the close relative. First, if you were in debt and became enslaved, only your goel could come and pay your price and set you free. Number 2, if you lost your property because of debt, only your goel could come and pay your price and bring the property back to the family. Number 3, only the goel, the closest of kin, could appear in court in your place. Number 4, the goel, the closest of kin, the kinsman redeemer, was the one that would avenge your blood if you were killed unjustly. And number 5, the goel, the kinsman redeemer, would marry the widow of the brother who died without descendants, and the first kid would have the brother's name so that the brother didn't die without descendants. Now, why is this so important? Why did it change my life? Well, the whole Bible is based on this topic. Check it out. When God created us in His image, He became our closest of kin. And He made the commitment to rescue us if something would happen to us, because He's our closest of kin. So check this out. In the Bible, the word redeemer in your Bibles is actually the word goel. It's not just redeemer, it's kinsman redeemer. It's the closest relative who would redeem you. And when Jesus would come, He would do all the 5 roles of the goel. He would pay the price at the cross, and you have been set free. That's why He said it is finished. He paid the price for our property. That's why the new earth will be here, because Jesus bought it back for us. Number 3, He appears in court in our place. Number 4, He will avenge our blood at the end of times. Number 5, He bought descendants for God from a race that was dead. That's why Isaiah 53 ends by saying He will see His descendants and be satisfied. Did you get that? So Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. He's our goel. So now if you reread the Bible, every time you see the word redeemer, now you know the name in Hebrew. It's kinsman redeemer. It's the closest relative. Check it out. For example, Isaiah 43:1. It says, "Do not be afraid, for I have goeled you," says the Hebrew. I have goeled you. I have called you by name. You are mine. So Jesus would come and do all the roles of the goel, and that's why we live with a fork in our hand. That's why we live with the full assurance of salvation, not because we have it all together, but because of what He has done. You know, Casting Crowns has a great song that says, "Not because of who I am, but because of what you have done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are." That is the reason why we live, because of this. The whole Bible is based on this concept. And you can never separate creation and redemption. That's why I don't understand the people that keep the Sabbath and only explain it with the first part. With creation, when the topic develops until you understand redemption, that the Creator has redeemed us, and that's why we come every 7th day to say, woohoo! Because the goel, check this out, if you didn't have a goel on earth, if you didn't have one, every 7 years, the heavenly goel stepped in, and all the debts were paid. And if you didn't have a Goel on this earth, every 7 times 7 years, not only the debts were paid, but the property went back to the original owner. Because God was teaching us to count in sevens our freedom throughout the whole Bible. So when you come here, you're not coming in order to gain your salvation because you worship on the seventh day. You're coming to go, woohoo, my Creator is my Goel, and I have been saved. Now, that's the Jews. That's very different. That's the real thing. And that's why, if the church is not joyful, they have not understood what Christ has done. Oh man, I've seen many churches that confuse reverence with depression. And let me tell you this. They confuse reverence with depression because something has happened with the woohoo in their hearts. They're not living with a fork in their hands, and you're going, man, this is not working for you. I don't want anything to do with that. If you come to me and say, hey, eat this. This is very good news. What's your name? Jolly? I have very good news for you. Would you like to eat this? She goes, you know why most people lack? Because if I go to you and say, I'm bringing you really good news, I look at your face, I'm going, hey, buddy, it's not working for you. So there has to be something in the way we understand Christ that is like, hey, I'm living or dying with a fork in my hand. Because I am absolutely sure that the best is yet to come. So what happened was, Jesus said to Martha, if it's true that you got it, let's go to the tomb. Verse 38, Jesus, again, being deeply moved, John 11:38, within came to the tomb, and it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, remove the stone. And Martha, who a moment ago said she believed, she tried to stop him. Martha, verse 39, the sister of the deceased, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, because he has been dead. He's really, really dead, Lord. I find the King James amusing on that verse. It says, Lord, it stinketh. I never thought they could use the word stink with F. It stinketh. And so what she's trying to say is, Lord, he's really, really dead, and there's a smell. And Jesus turns and says, didn't you tell me a moment ago that you believe? Because if you believe, I know your marriage might not be looking right, and your kid might not be looking right, and we know how the story ends. And Jesus wins. So how important it is in life to have this worldview. Not that there's no problems, because that's called denial. And I don't mean the river in Egypt. I mean denial. And a lot of people live in denial. Have you met those Christians that just, everything is perfect? God, I used to be that person. Because I was in denial, the real one. And then there was all kinds of tragedies in my life. I lost my first marriage to divorce after 15 years. And I thought that didn't happen to people like us. And then I realized that us is the same as everyone else. And so my dad was a president of something in our church at that time, and I was getting letters from all over the world why I shouldn't get divorced, and they didn't know my husband had been unfaithful for years and years and years, because people love to talk about things that they don't know anything about. So now I can talk about it because I've been married to my second husband for 17 years, and he had 3 daughters, so I have 3 stepdaughters and 9 grandchildren. I get to preach the gospel every single day on television and radio. But if you told me about this life 20 years ago, I couldn't have believed you. But in the process, I went from my head to my heart. And I found a God much bigger than the box I have placed him in. And I'm hoping that no matter what kind of tomb-like situation, you may know that for the Christian, there's never a final answer. Because not even death is final for the Christian. And so Martha says that there will be a stench. And Jesus said, but didn't we discuss this already? So she moved. Verse 43. This is great. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And in scholarship, we study these things. And most scholars said that he had to say Lazarus because this was a whole cemetery. And this was life talking. And if he said, come out, the whole mountain was going to resurrect. So he said, no, not everybody. Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus came out. And Lazarus came out to teach us what's going to happen when Jesus comes. And every time I go to my parents' tomb, I know there's angels guarding them there. But I can't wait for Jesus to meet them there. Because that day is not going to be just Lazarus. It's going to be every name of every person that we know who died in Christ. And they will come out. And so I want to tell you that there is a way to live this life with a fork in our hands, even with divorce and even with trouble. And God knows everything about you. He knows about your abortion. He knows about your porn addiction. He knows about your jail. He knows about your drugs. He knows about the whole thing. And he still wants you. So today I want to ask you not to just settle for this. Because this was made only with the sole purpose for you to get to the Jews. So all the doctrines and all the hows and all the whats have been designed for you to access the who. Now I have to make a confession, and it's the fact that I was born in the Adventist church, but I had not understood the gospel. I spent years and decades with peeling and white stuff, and without joy in the process. One day somebody showed me the movie the documentary I'm about to show you. And for the first time it clicked because I understood the Goel concept. I had studied it, and then I saw this video. You've seen the video because it's all over social media and YouTube. It's about a father and son who run marathons together. Last name is Hoyt. They live close to Bakersfield in California. The son, I have been following them for 20 years, following them on social media. Not stalking them, So what happened was this son was born quadriplegic with cerebral palsy. And the doctors told him, you have to get rid of this kid. Let him die because he's going to be a burden for you all your life. And the father said, no, I'm his closest of kin. I'm his father. I'm going to do for him what he cannot do for himself. And so the father left his job in the army. And he started doing for this kid what nobody else could do or the kid couldn't do himself. And so one day when he was 9 years old, the boy, they entered a 5K marathon together for handicapped people, 5K marathon, and the father took the wheelchair until the finish line. When they crossed the finish line, see, he can't talk. This boy can't talk, and he can't coordinate his hands, but he's very smart. So he was smiling when they crossed the finish line. He was just smiling, and the father wanted to know why he was so happy. So they got home, and they had made a computer for him that they put on his forehead, this thing that he could type. So they got home, and he typed, Dad, today when we crossed the finish line, I felt like a winner. I felt like I could walk. I felt like I was worth something. And the father said, oh, my son, of course you're worth something. You're my son. We're going to enter every possible marathon. And until today, they've done 1,000 marathons together. But it was the day I saw this documentary of the Ironman triathlon in Hawaii. And I saw this father carry his handicapped son to the finish line. It was the first time I understood the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is a song, I'm the handicapped kid sitting in that chair, spiritually speaking. And Jesus has done for me everything because he's my Goel, my kinsman redeemer. And there is a song in the documentary, My Redeemer Lives. Let's watch it and then I'll finish. Maybe the whole thing will click right now.
Who taught the sun where to stand in the morning? And who told the ocean you can only come this far? And who
If an earthly father can take his handicapped son, 126 miles of biking, 26.5 miles of running, 2.5 miles of swimming, all the way to the finish line, don't you think we can trust our heavenly Goel, our kinsman redeemer, to have done that for us? I'm so handicapped in so many ways, emotionally and spiritually. But I know that my Redeemer lives. I have believed in my Goel. I know how the story ends. So no matter what the trials around me, I can live with a fork in my hand because I know how the story ends. And I know the best is yet to come. And you know what? I want to invite you to taste it. God said, taste me, and you'll see I'm good. So, until we see him face to face, and all those we lost on the way, may you live with a fork in your hand, because we already know how the story ends. And we're going to say it together. 1, 2, 3. Jesus wins. God bless you.